A while ago, we made a video asking the question of if any of Yoda's species had ever turned to the dark side. In that video, we talked briefly about only 6 known members of Yoda's species: Yaddle, Grogu, Minch, Oteg, Vandar, Tokare, and of course Yoda himself. In this video, we would like to take a look at what we know of each of these members and rank them to see who is the most powerful member of Yoda's species and who reigns supreme. We know that Yoda's species is inherently incredibly powerful with the Force, the light side specifically, with Yoda being hailed as the greatest lightsaber wielder of his era, as well as one of the greatest Force wielders to have ever lived, only rivaled in sheer might by the likes of Sidious, Anakin, and Luke Skywalker. As always, ladies and gentlemen, if you know someone who loves Star Wars as much as we do and would like to know more about these obscure topics, consider sharing the video and subscribing to stay up to date on all things Star Wars related. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Let's rank Yoda's species least to most powerful. Starting off at number 6 and the weakest, it probably won't come as much as a surprise that we place Grogu here at the weakest. This is only because of his age and lack of experience in comparison to the other knights and masters on this list. However, just because he is the lowest down doesn't mean his feats should be overlooked. At the age of 50, still an infant by Yoda's species standards, he has shown the capability of doing things that many average Jedi Knights cannot. Grogu is exceptionally powerful. He can repel large walls of jetting fire, force choke a fully grown humanoid, telekinetically lift a charging adult mudhorn, and even use the rare and extremely taxing ability of Force Heal. The light side ability of the Force Heal often requires not only many years of specialized training in the Jedi arts, but often requires a natural born affinity to the power. It's clear that Grogu is incredibly naturally talented with the ways and gifts of the Force, so much so that even the likes of Ahsoka Tano feared training someone of Grogu's caliber. Still though, as we last saw him, Grogu lacks experience and has to rely on the kindness of others to traverse his way throughout the galaxy. It's clear that Grogu, out of anyone on this list, may have the most potential, but as of late, we have not seen it fully realized. Again though, this is subject to change with the future. At number 5, we have placed Jedi Knight Minch. Minch was a Jedi Knight that existed during the High Republic era about 700 BBY. Minch was described as fiery in battle and had a bit of an affinity for it. He stands out among other members of Yoda's species because of this. We are first introduced to him when he is seen in the Bafasi system hunting down the Bafasi Dark Jedi. He had failed in his first attempt to bring down the Dark Jedi apprentice, who ended up ending his own life as soon as Minch's Jedi squad had arrived to his aid. Eager to prove himself as a competent warrior, Minch engaged the Dark Jedi Master, who had crash-landed on the planet of Dagobah, ignoring the warning given to him by Master to die. Minch engaged in saber combat with the Dark Master inside a cave on the swampy world. At first, the Bafasi Master proved to be very powerful to the young Jedi Knight, and Minch began to be overwhelmed, using Force visions to overwhelm Minch and goad him into using the dark side by teasing his size and questioning his place as a Jedi Knight. Minch eventually overcame and triumphed over the Dark Lord and eventually managed to kill him. The powers of the Dark Master were so great though that it would corrupt the cave with the dark side of the Force for many years to come. The very same cave was the one investigated by Luke during his training with Yoda, where he saw the Force vision of his potential fate as well as a vision of his father, Vader. Yoda had used the dark side nexus as a way of masking his presence in the Force from the Emperor during the reign of the Empire. We are placing Minch just above Grogu due to his position as a Jedi Knight, and also because he was arguably less wise than the others on this list. Although Minch's position in the light was cemented during his battle with the Dark Master, he was still stubborn and rash, by rushing ahead not once but twice against the Dark Jedi for nothing else than to prove that he was a capable warrior. This shows a severe lack of maturity and wisdom on his part. Not only that, but it could have cost him his life and the mission overall. The little bits we get of his actual power is his prowess in combat. Although he managed to defeat the Bafasi Master, it was only really because he had been goaded into a frenzy of hacking and slashing randomly at all of the Force illusions around him, and had just happened to land a hit on the Dark Master. Minch had also lost to the Dark Apprentice, and with these two displays, we rule him as weaker than the others. Not to mention that although the Bafasi Dark Jedi was very powerful, a Dark Jedi is nowhere near the inherent power of a Sith Lord, especially a Sith Lord like Palpatine or Vader. Therefore, that is why we have placed Minch at number 5. Next on the list is Master Oteg. Oteg was educated in the ways of the Force by the Jedi Order 2 centuries before the start of the Great Galactic War. Rising to the rank of Master, Oteg was serving aboard the Republic starship Serapin Wanderer during the Great Galactic War, when suddenly it was attacked by the Sith Empire and his captain was killed. Assuming command and organizing a counterattack, Oteg proved his prowess in warfare when he drove the Imperial fleet into a nearby nebula and tricked them into detonating the gases of the nebula to destroy the fleet. We don't get a lot of information on his actual powers, but he is placed at number 4 due to his ranking of Master and his crafty technical skill on the battlefield and as a naval commander. It is clear that Oteg is powerful and wise due to his rank of Master, and was able to think quickly, and is also likely extremely talented in the gifts of the Force, especially because he is also much older than Minch and Grogu. Moving on to another member of Yoda's species around the time of the Mandalorian War and the subsequent Jedi Civil War, we have Master Vandar. He is an interesting one due to the fact that he is the only member of Yoda's species to date that is recorded to have a last name, that name being Tokare. Vandar was a male Jedi Master of Yoda's species who was the head of the Dantooine Jedi Enclave during the Mandalorian Wars and the subsequent Jedi Civil War, holding a seat on both the Jedi High Council and the Council of the Jedi Academy during his time span. Vandar was friends with fellow council member Rook Lamar, usually having the last word in their frequent disagreements, most notably on the choice to train Revan once again in the ways of the Jedi after his fall to the dark side of the Force, and ascension to Darth Revan. Unfortunately, during the Conclave at Qatar, Tokare was killed along with many survivors of the first Great Jedi Purge, and unfortunately, the entire colony was killed after the Sith Lord Darth Nihilus drained the Force from the planet's surface, with this being the unfortunate end of the great and valiant Jedi Master. Vandar was a master of Form 4 lightsaber combat Ataru, and actually used the Jar Kai variant of the form by a way of using 2 Shoto lightsabers. Shoto lightsabers essentially means that they were shorter than most normal lightsabers to account for his height. A testament to his power was his ability to use the Force to wield both of his lightsabers with telekinesis. Using the Force to wield one's lightsaber was not a common practice due to how intense of focus it required. Putting a lightsaber in its intricate sequences with nothing but the Force was an incredible feat. Like most wielders of the Force, he could perform mind tricks, but he also possessed many strong Force powers such as Sever Force and Force Suppression. Sever Force was a light side ability that allowed the user to temporarily interrupt an opponent's connection with the Force itself. The only other abilities we really see like this are dark side in nature, such as Force Scream. Force Suppression, also known as Force Breach, was a controversial mind-affecting Force power that was developed by crafty Force sensitives. It did not desire to kill their opponent or permanently remove them of the Force. The power allowed a Force sensitive to harness the Force in order to convince others that they had been cut off from the Force itself, and as such, it served to both diminish an enemy's Force resistance and as well as negate a vaster range of Force abilities, essentially tricking an opponent that they had lost the Force entirely by controlling the Force that they manipulated themselves. An incredibly impressive feat that places Vandar firmly at number 3. Beyond the Clone Wars era, Vandar is clearly the most powerful of Yoda's species. Coming up at number 2, we have Jedi Master Yaddle. Yaddle was a member of the Jedi Council around the time of the Phantom Menace, and died somewhat before Attack of the Clones. Yaddle had unfortunately been imprisoned after a liberation gone wrong on the planet of Koba. A warlord known as Tulik slayed her master, and kept her in a pit where she was subjected to many tortures. She held true and stayed here for nearly 100 years. During this time, she never once felt a pull to the dark side, and even rooted herself more firmly in the light by forgiving her captors. After an earthquake opened up a crack in the pit that she was being held in, she escaped and even stayed longer to help rebuild the planet from the hellscape of despair that it was left after Tulik's reign, deciding to help those that had hurt her for so long. Yaddle was so powerful in the light side that she possessed abilities that were nearly unheard of, such as Mochiro, the ability to slow another creature's vitals and bodily functions to the point of near death. She could also use the ability Force Light. Force Light was a light side Force power used by the Jedi. When used against a Darksider, Force Light would weaken the Darksider's connection to the Force itself. It was also believed that Force Light was only an ability that Jedi Grandmasters could wield, such as Yoda or Luke Skywalker, with Yaddle being the only Jedi besides a Grandmaster capable of using this ability. With the light side of the Force, a Jedi could either purge or contain dark side manifestations or nexus points, whether in places, spirits, or even living persons, though sometimes this was a detrimental effect to the Jedi. Jedi. By channeling the Force into withering blasts of light side energy, the darkness can then be diminished or destroyed permanently. Force light could also be used to sever the bond between a Sith battle lord and his followers. Luke Skywalker would later use this ability against Abeloth in order to survive one of her dark side onslaughts. Yaddle was also considered an extremely adept lightsaber duelist. However, it was often her last resort to ever draw upon her skill with the blade. Unfortunately, at this point in time, the whereabouts of Jedi Master Yaddle are completely unknown, as she presumably left the Jedi Order before the events of the Clone Wars broke out. Finally, we arrive at number 1. It may not be much of a surprise for you that we have chosen Yoda as our final slot. Master Yoda definitely takes the mantle of the most powerful of his species. In his time, his power was nearly unrivaled. Yoda was the master of form for Utaru and had mastered it to its highest degree, more so than Count Dooku had mastered Makashi. Utaru was a purely aggressive and offensive fighting style that used the Force to carry one's body beyond its physical limits, and was incredibly physically demanding. It focused on dispatching enemies with quick, overwhelming bursts of acrobatic attacks which suited users of short stature. Yoda was the finest duelist of his time. Despite his age and the weaknesses of Utaru has to multiple opponents and to long-lasting engagements, Yoda managed to overcome these weaknesses due to his ability to bolster his physical prowess with the Force. At one time, to demonstrate the effectiveness of Force to a group of younglings, Yoda instructed Masters Plo Koon, Sei Tin, and Deepa Billaba to come at him with full force. They all used the best of their abilities with the lightsaber, but Yoda was able to avoid every single swing and strike without so much as igniting his own saber. Furthermore, this is why Dooku had to use the cheap trick of causing the pipes to fall on Anakin and Obi-Wan so that he could escape, realizing that Yoda was still his superior. The duel on Coruscant between Palpatine and Yoda is another testament to his skill with the lightsaber. Despite the fact that Sidious had claimed that he had grown past the use of one, he still failed and lost the duel to Master Yoda. In the Revenge of the Sith novelization, it tells us that Yoda had actually disarmed Sidious, so by those rules, he had actually won the duel itself. Of course, Sidious fell back on his Force abilities, and in that area, he was superior to the Grand Master. However, Yoda was still a challenge to him in the Force potential wise, especially with his powers in Terminus, also known as Force Absorb. Yoda had mastered the ability of Terminus to the point of being able to absorb the lightning of Darth Sidious himself, which had been rumored to be so powerful that it could turn victims to dust. In terms of telekinesis, Yoda had no equal in his era. There existed a famous set of 7 stones called the Monter Stones, which were used to train Jedi in telekinesis. Inspired by the rock gardens within the ancient gardens of Tala, the stones were a powerful meditation tool. The stones were nonetheless kept in the Kudaka chamber of the Jedi Temple. Here, Jedi could test their telekinetic abilities by seeing how many of the stones they could lift simultaneously, with each stone weighing at least a ton, and the heaviest stone weighing at over 5 tons. Merely jostling a stone was marked as an achievement by a Padawan, with Jedi Knights being able to lift multiple stones at a single time. Only masters of telekinesis were able to lift more than 4 at a time. However, Yoda was able to lift 5 after he passed 700 years of age. Besides this, in Legends, during the Battle of Coruscant, Yoda was able to use the Force to bring 2 separatist droid ships into a collision with one another, as well as lift dozens of droidekas in the air in a way of oncoming droid starfighters. Without a doubt, we believe Yoda is the most powerful of his species, and it's not even close. But we would like to hear what you think about it. Do you think Grandmaster Yoda is deserving of the title as the most powerful member of his species? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.